Welcome to High Performance, the podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Alexander Phillips. Alexander, today we're going to talk about a really important topic, which is about selling that vendor-paid marketing. And a lot of agents have some challenges around this about what they do and how they're pitching that marketing and how to actually get the vendor to pay for it. And, you know, when we get to work in some markets where people perceive that that's easy, but we also get to work in markets where it's really tough because there's a lot of financial hardship. What are some of the things that an agent needs to do in order to be able to set themselves up correctly to be able to sell that vendor-paid marketing to the client and be able to get them to pay for it?
I think they've got to understand, Josh, that it's an investment into getting more buyers through the door. And obviously, you know, real estate's a numbers game. More buyers through the door means a better price. So, you know, an extra $5,000 on marketing, you're getting a, you know, $10,000, $50,000 bid pays for itself 10 times over. But I think also, you know, for any of the newer guys starting out there, you know, back when I started 10, 15 years ago, you're looking at vendor paid advertising at, you know, probably about triple of what it is now. So with internet database, you know, driven marketing and off-market platforms and things like that, you know, it's a lot easier, I think, to sell. But if you're starting out and you're worried about it, maybe it's about going in with a two-stage approach. And if you're in an office that has a great database that's actually used and can email out alerts, and also you can call people, maybe you do it as a sort of soft approach. So let's blast out to our database, get on the phones, let's get you some feedback, see how it goes, and then we can make the decision from there if you launch it on the market. And then I think once the vendor knows that you've put in, you know, time and effort, and, you know, that the price is not there but not far off, all of a sudden, you know, that $5,000 marketing expense or whatever it may be is not difficult for them to look at.
And I just think about this is that it's hard to sell, or that you just don't know how to pitch it. And the reason I say that is that there are some very simple laws and rules at play that can kind of help here. And one of those is what we've got to call the law of comparison. So say Alex, I just want to let you know, we're going to talk a bit about the marketing today, and you can spend up to $15,000 marketing your property. Now, at that point, most people are going to go gulp, you know, like, wow, like, you know, like, we can't afford that. So no, I didn't ask you that you have to spend. I'm just saying you can. What I wanted to show you here is that here are some sample campaigns. This is our large campaign. It runs at $8,800. This is our medium campaign that runs at $4,400. This is our small campaign that now runs at $2,200. Now, the very fact that you've now mentioned $15,000, it actually makes $8,000 sound as a lot cheaper. And then $4,400 sounds like, oh, geez, okay. And then $2,200 is like, oh, maybe we're not spending enough. And so this is a really interesting thing that in a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, he talked about the importance of being able to show that law of comparison in the way that you got to work with the consumer, and that what you're doing is you're stripping value out rather than building value up. And what a lot of agents do is that they start with the cheaper price point first and then try to build the value up, but they don't have the case study or the story. And one of my favorites on this is to always use, if you're in an auction environment, even if you're in a for sale environment where you can show multiple offers, but in an auction environment where you can show a bidding record, link each of the individual specific bidders with a different lead source. So to give you an idea, this particular bidder, number 43, they started their bidding at $460,000. They added $165,000 worth of competition up to $625,000. They didn't buy the home, but $165,000 worth of competition added, and they came directly from the paper. And this is the challenge, is that, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, would you spend $1,000 or $2,000 if it meant that we could get you an extra $165,000 worth of competition? See, by the law of comparison now, that's a really easy decision to make. But what people don't do is they don't talk about case studies. How important are case studies in selling this vendor-paid marketing to our clients?
They can actually relate to it, Josh, and you know, they can touch and feel it. You know, you can talk with confidence. You know, one that we recently listed and sold, another agent was only doing the small ads on domain and realestate.com. They didn't furnish it, didn't paint it. We came in and spent $15,000 and sold in 10 days and was about $140,000 above the best offer of the previous agent. So, you know, having the brochure of the previous agent, the brochure of our property, and the differences, and the case study, and giving the client the opportunity to call that, you know, vendor that we just sold for to cross-reference it. You know, you're talking with confidence, and the minute, you know, you've obviously been able to get that, you know, across the line, they'll definitely go ahead with it.
And I think this is a big conversation for people too, is that if you're not confident about your pitch in terms of the marketing, then you're going to be really in trouble in actually getting control over the client. And one of the major reasons that we love vendor paid marketing is that, you know, the customers must want to sell their property more than you want to sell it for them. And that's a great way to do it. But sometimes, Alex, I just don't think that agents read the play. How do you read the play to work out if the consumer is very economically driven and therefore may have some financial difficulty when it actually comes to paying for the marketing?
It's the body language. It's do we have to pay that up front? What are your accounts like? Can we hold back payment? You can feel it out, Josh. From how they come across to you. So, that's up to that agency on how they carry their marketing. But then you might do that two-stage approach, or you're doing the upsell in the marketing halfway through the campaign. But it's asking the right questions. Do you have the money to pay for this marketing? Be direct. Ask a question. If they don't, then you're going to have to work out a way around it.
And and there are some other ways. Let's get the photography done. Let's get it into a position that we can show 1 or 2 buyers through, and then let's make the decision if we need to launch in order to be able to maximize the sale price. But I think that what's really important here is that if you're desperate, then the client's going to be desperate. But here's the thing: if you don't have passion and energy and commitment around it, then you're not going to go and sell it. And I see this a lot with people too, where they actually don't believe in certain items, whether or not it be video or newspaper or the high listing on the major real estate websites. Whatever it is, if you don't believe in it, you're not going to sell it. Would you agree that it's important to understand what's absolutely essential and to have that belief around the product?
Josh, you need to have belief around the product, and I think if you don't, you're not going to be able to get across to the vendor that you're passionate about it. So, obviously showing stats around where the buyers are coming from. Our past 20 sales graph that we created with you, Josh, has got where each buyer of that property first viewed it. And, there's not one of them in the last 20 that's seen it through papers. It's either internet or database. So we can talk to the vendor saying there is no point at all. It's an absolute waste of money to look at investing in the papers.
And the flip side to that is to learn how to ask better questions. So I think that agents ask a poor question in saying, where did you first see the property advertised? And of course, internet's going to be the first response. But what happens if you did this and said, hey, quick question, why don't we go back and ask every single buyer who's actually bought from us, just survey them and say, which marketing mediums have you used during the course of your property search? And now what you're actually going to find is a higher uptake because people actually use different sources. And what you've got to understand is that different markets are going to perform differently around those items. And so learn where the customer hangs out and understand the difference between ensuring that the owner has done everything that they can in order to maximize sale price in order to be able to get their property pitched correctly. And in a market where there's a lot of properties on market, the most important thing for you to do is to be able to separate and to differentiate that home. But, have a look at your collateral, make sure you've got great case studies, be in a position that you know how to pitch that marketing and try to sell it to your own sales team. And if they wouldn't buy it from you, then don't expect the customer to buy it from you. And that's the importance of getting the pitch right.